Okay, hello everyone. Happy World Oceans Day, and welcome to the Sunshine Coast Ocean Festival. This is day one of our festival and day one of our 2026 Nemo Talk series. We're so excited for this year's program, and we're really glad you could join us. I'm Suzanne Sanger, the Executive Director of the Sunshine Coast Conservation Association, and I'm joining this talk today from Chiquelt in Gibsons in Atkatsum House Sound, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. The SCCA is a charitable nonprofit. We work to protect and restore biodiversity in the Sunshine Coast Natural Resource District from Howe Sound to Hamatko in the territories of the Squamish, the Shishak, Tliamin, Klahoose, and Homolko First Nations. We are so grateful to the First Nations of these areas who have stewarded the lands and the waters for time immemorial. And our organization and this program draws deep inspiration from Indigenous stewardship of the lands and the waters over such a long period of time and with such consciousness. Together with our program partner, Rhizome Up Media, we are thrilled to bring you our week-long Ocean Festival and this Nemo Talk series. This year's events have been made possible through the generous support of a number of funders, including the District of Sechelt, Sunshine Coast Credit Union, Ocean Week Canada, Sitka Foundation, BC Government, and the Government of Canada. We're very grateful to our donors and our sponsors for making this program possible. So today, for our first talk in this series, we are just super excited to host Shelly Kemp to share with us about the WSÁNEĆ Marine Guardians program. Shelly grew up in Ontario on Anishinaabe and Huron-Wendat territories before moving to Vancouver Island to study marine biology. She completed her BSc and MSc at UVic in geography, marine biology, and the Marine Protected Areas Research Group. Building on her education, Shelly worked with Gulf Islands National Park Reserve, Shaw Center for the Salish Sea, and Peninsula Streams and Shorelines before joining David Dick and the WSÁNEĆ Marine Guardians in 2022. She was honored to step into the senior manager role following David's legacy to represent the Guardians and share all the good work. Shelly's talk today introduces the WSÁNEĆ Marine Guardians and their work bridging traditional knowledge with modern technology to monitor the Salish Sea, focusing on the endangered southern resident killer whale and ensuring Indigenous knowledge is integrated into science and policy making. Shelly, we're so happy to have you today. Welcome.
Ais Rachel, Shelly Denisney, I Kunas Kwanin Suhela, Haichkuchted Sensei, Etla Etia Enoch. Hi everyone, good day. My name is Shelly. It is good to see all of you. Thank you for inviting me here today. I look forward to discussing our program with you and to have a discussion with you afterwards as well. I would love to share my screen with you and start the presentation. Is this a good time? Perfect. All right, so just a note that all the pictures and images that you'll see were taken by our team, the Quintalian WSÁNEĆ Marine Guardians. But I'll first provide a brief overview of our program. So since 2022, we have been monitoring the Salish Sea as the ancestors have done since time immemorial. Our main focus is to protect the KELŁOLEMECEN, or the southern resident killer whales, or killer whales. And we do this by bridging traditional WSÁNEĆ knowledge with modern technology to ensure WSÁNEĆ involvement in conservation and to advocate for Indigenous science and policy making. So our name, Quintalian, was actually chosen by the language committee, and it's made up of three Sinchothan words. Sinchothan is the language of the WSÁNEĆ peoples. So first you have the Quen, Qen, means to watch out to sea. The Tol, Tol, means to be out at sea, and yen, the yen, comes from Quinalian, which is a reef net captain. We are an initiative of the WSÁNEĆ Leadership Council, and our logo is called the sea wolf, and it's actually a wolf transforming into a killer whale. So you can see the transformation with the fin. So our work is based on 4 components. We have the baseline monitoring, habitat monitoring, compliance monitoring, and WSÁNEĆ culture. Before I jump into each of those components, I just want to provide a brief overview of where we conduct our work. So we have broken it down to 3 zones, and we have an additional 4th zone now. But our office is located just in Brentwood Bay on Sartlib territory, just in here, if you can see my mouse, within the Saanich Inlet in Zone 3. And then we also go out onto our vessels. We have 2 vessels, and we go and travel and monitor the Southern Gulf Islands. So Zone 2 comprises the ones that are closer to Sydney. So Darcy Island, Halibut Island, Mandarte, Moresby, and then the outer Southern Gulf Islands, Galliano, Pender, Maine, Saturna, comprise Zone 1. But it is important to note that anywhere that you are traveling in is traditional Indigenous territory. And so there are traditional place names, as you can see on this map. And each place name is not just a name, it is a descriptive factor about the location and about the place. So if you are ever curious about the location that you live, work, and play in, it's a great idea to try to understand the traditional place names. As you can see here as well, it also includes the US side. So within WSÁNEĆ territory, there were no boundaries. The marine ecosystem and the species that travel through them, they also do not know any boundaries. And so you can see that the Sanchothan place names extend those boundaries as the WSÁNEĆ peoples would have worked and continued to work and live across those borders as well. Okay, so the first component is the baseline monitoring, and this includes marine mammal detections. So we conduct on the water monitoring. So we go out onto our vessels and we work closely with the Gulf Island Sightings Network, as well as with SIMRES, the Saturna Island Marine Research and Education Society. And so we're going out on the water and we're trying to identify where the marine mammals are. The focus is the southern resident killer whales, but we're also trying to identify other marine mammals, such as other whales, other kinds of killer whales, pinnipeds, humpback whales, some gray whales as well. And we're trying to identify where they are, their behaviors, to get a sense of population abundance. So we take photos, we record it and collect data to determine, again, what is happening out on the water, to get a sense of if it's changing over time, what individuals are traveling through the waters, and what we can do. So these are just some of the images that we see going, again, for pinniped haulouts as well. And we're also recording other critters that we see too, just to understand, again, the health of the marine ecosystem within the Salish Sea. Our team also saw their first sea otter just south of Darcy Island, which was very exciting just last year. And then we see oyster catchers, river otters, porpoises as well. So it's very exciting, just again, trying to be the eyes and ears out on the water. We also use a variety of tools to remotely monitor these areas as well. So we have 3 hydrophones set up on Rum Island, on Tumbo Island, and an active pass as well. And these are in collaboration with BC Wales and the Simon Fraser University. And again, we're trying to identify how what is traveling through these waters as well without us having to actively be there. So again, these are working 24/7 and they allow us to determine what are the cetacean species that are traveling. We can also identify the ecotype as well based on the different calls. So this image right here is a spectrogram of a southern resident killer whale call. And also we're able to detect vessel noise because these areas have a lot of vessel traffic going through, especially within the shipping lanes and ferry traffic. So we're able to see how they're impacting these whales as well, whether they're being masked, their calls are being masked. And I'll touch on that a little bit later as well. But we're able to see even outliers as well within vessels if there are ones that are louder. So we're just trying to see acoustically what is happening within these areas as well. And we also have 2 thermal imaging camera setups, one on Saturna Island, just overlooking Tumbo Channel, and one on Pender Island as well. So there are two cameras at each site. And these ones are very interesting because, again, they run 24/7, and they allow us to, again, detect any marine mammals. But also you can get really cool images of just fish jumping out of the water. So what happens is as an animal passes through, its body temperature is different than its surrounding waters. And so you get an image. So if there is a difference in temperature detected by these cameras, it'll turn on and take an image or a video if it's during the day. And you can actually see um, humpbacks or killer whales just transiting by, which is very interesting. So we can get a sense. You can't really detect the ecotypes at this point or individuals, but we can use other sources like visual sighting data, hydrophone data to triangulate and try to identify which individuals are transiting through these waters as well. So it's been a very cool tool, again, to minimize the impact that we're having on the water. So all the purple lines are actually all the transits and all the lines that we've done and traveled in 2025. The three green red triangles are our hydrophones, and the green are our thermal imaging cameras. And this is an overview of all the marine mammals that we've detected for last year as well. You can see these shapes right here are the thermal imaging cameras. The circular ones are the hydrophones, and all the individual ones are the individual species that we've seen while just out on the water. And all the data that is in this report are also in our annual reports, which we have available for free on our website as well. And so now we have habitat monitoring as well, because part of it is not only trying to identify the marine mammals, but also the connection between freshwater and saltwater as well in the ocean. And so we do work in Selecteth or Gold Stream, which is the main salmon-bearing stream within the territory. So we use a variety of different tools, such as drone mapping, to identify any physical changes of the stream over time. It also allows us to have better salmon counts as well. As you can see, salmon pools, because traditional methods of just walking through and counting it can be quite challenging when you just have a pool of salmon. So with a drone, you can actually fly over and get a little bit more accurate counts. But we do still do salmon walks, and we assist the Goldstream hatchery as well to do annual counts to see how many salmon there are returning every year. And unfortunately, it has been declining. And the last year was, I think, the lowest on record. So it is quite unfortunate. So we are monitoring these trends and trying to understand why and what we can do about it. We also conduct water quality testing to ensure the actual water is healthy. So we look at temperature, salinity, oxygen, and other levels as well to determine whether it's healthy for salmon. And we also look at benthic macroinvertebrate surveys. So a healthy stream should have a variety and a presence and abundance of diverse benthic macroinvertebrates. And so these are things like insect larvae or crayfish. And these also make up the bottom of the food chain and the food for salmon, which then alternatively become the food for larger predators like KELÇOLEMEÇEN. We also assist the Gold Team hatchery in some of their operations, including transplanting different salmon to try to revive different streams within WSÁNEĆ territory, but also outside of it as well. We also have BRUV, so Beta Remote Underwater Video Systems, which are, again, cost-effective, non-invasive ways to understand what's happening underwater. So we just set them down and we can understand what's happening in nearshore environments, what species are there, how it changes from season to season. Again, trying to understand what's happening overall. And last year we began a canopy kelp mapping project. So the image on the right is just one example of one of the islands that we've mapped. So we send out our drone and we're trying to map the extent of the kelp now and how that might change year to year. And we're looking forward to doing that again this year in the summer. And so the biggest component is the compliance monitoring. So in order to talk about that, we have to talk a little bit about the background of the southern resident killer whales. So they are an endangered species. And since the 1970s, when the first account was made and the first record of their populations, they have been declining steadily. And unfortunately, they haven't really been reviving, especially since 2005. So the latest census completed last year identified 74 individuals and they're all part of one clan, and they're broken down into three pods or three families with their own dialects and their own ranges that they cover. But they do intermingle sometimes and come together to form a super pod, which is very exciting to see. But there are 27 individuals in J pod, 14 in K pod, and 33 in L pod. And so one thing that's really important about the southern resident killer whales is there are certain aspects of their biology and their behavior which make them specifically vulnerable to different threats. So their diet is made up of over 80% Chinook salmon. They seasonally migrate with the salmon. Their core range is between Washington State and central Vancouver Island, but they can be found outside of that range as well. And they rely on echolocation and sound to communicate, hunt, and navigate. So all of that together is very specific for the southern resident killer whales, which affects the prey availability. So what's happening now is about 50% of BC Chinook salmon populations are endangered. So you have an endangered species relying on another endangered species, which makes them incredibly vulnerable. As I mentioned, they're very susceptible to noise disturbance. So in the Salish Sea and within their critical habitat, you have over 300,000 vessels transiting each year. This includes very large shipping containers, bulk carriers, um, and ferry traffic as well, along with a lot of recreational and smaller commercial vessels as well, which are making it just very, very noisy in these waters. So if you imagine, they're living in an area that's like being at a rock concert all the time. So they're having to spend a lot more energy trying to find food if they're even able to, because with less food, they have to spend more energy to locate it. And it's becoming incredibly difficult to do that with the increasing number of vessels. They're also living in waters that are very contaminated. So orcas in BC are among the most contaminated mammals in the world. And they're also susceptible to oil spills. So there are currently 800 or more tankers transporting billions of liters of oil through critical habitat. And this number is just increasing with continuously new mega projects being approved and accepted by the government. So, in order to acknowledge some of these threats, the government has put forward some management measures to try to protect them. So, this right here, so the yellow areas are salmon fishing closures, and the red areas are vessel restricted zones, where vessels aren't allowed to transit between June 1st and November. And then there's also a slowdown area for bulk shipping containers and tankers transiting through the areas as well. And as of this year, they have increased the marine mammal distance regulations specifically for the southern resident killer whales. So now vessels are not allowed to be within 1,000 meters of SRKW, but you are able to get closer to different ecotypes of killer whales, which includes the transient killer whales. And so our work is to see how effective all these measures are actually being out on the water. And the reality is we are finding a lot of challenges. So unfortunately, there is insufficient on-water enforcement, which is why we are trying to fill the gap and be out on the water. There are about 2 DFO vessels that are able to transit these waters, but they're also monitoring the entire Pacific region. So it's very difficult to actually have the people out on the water to see what's happening and to enforce the measures that are put into place. There's a disconnect between what's on paper versus what's actually happening on the water. In the previous slide, you could see that there were these beautiful maps and they're very lovely and very clear. But what happens is when you get on the water, there aren't these clear boundaries. There are not these clear areas. These areas aren't flagged. They should be on people's navigation systems. But what we're seeing on the water is that it's not really being followed. And you get these decisions that are made from people in Ottawa about what's happening in these local waters. So there's a really big disconnect. There are also inherent challenges in measuring approach distances at sea. And so when we're out on the water, we are trying to use a variety of different tools. We have a very sophisticated navigation system, which allows us to actually detect how close we are. We try to use different landmarks as well. We also use laser rangefinders, a variety of cameras, and different tools to try to identify, okay, how close are we to another vessel, to a marine mammal, is very challenging because your depth perception is very different out on the water. And even in talking with the enforcement team from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans Canada, they have acknowledged that it's very challenging to do this. But what's happening is we are out there, we have a team of 4 people trying to identify, okay, how far are we from another vessel? And we're trying to gather all this evidence that we can. But other vessels, they are not doing that. So you'll get whale watching vessels that have one person on board taking photos, being a naturalist, talking to individuals, and trying to operate the vessel at the same time on a small Zodiac or even a large boat. So how are they really able to tell apart how far they are? But also, if they do get closer to whales, there aren't really any consequences. So if people are fishing in no fishing areas, they can get a ticket, but that doesn't exist when you are going too close to a whale, for example. So it is treated like a court case and a criminal case, and so it involves gathering witness statements and going to court, which can take years to actually have anything happen for it. So currently, there actually aren't really anything that can be done on the water, and only the really egregious cases get pushed through, and even then, it's not very helpful. Also, these measures haven't changed in the last 4 years or so. They did just improve. So they did increase the distance that you can approach SRKW, but again, without the enforcement, how effective is that? So these measures haven't changed in 4 years, but we're expecting the populations to change, even though the measures haven't. So we really have to be adopting the precautionary principle and making more. And also, unfortunately, there are new mega projects that are being approved. So first it was TMX, then it was Robert Bank Terminal 2, and then now there are new proposals for another Alberta pipeline. So there are new mega projects coming in without really considering how the other mega projects are affecting them because these orcas are already stressed, and we're not really doing much about it, unfortunately, federally. And the reason why is because we are prioritizing short-term economic profit over long-term marine preservation. And by we, I mean the federal government is doing that. And so we are pushing for better and more effective measures um, and long-term support for monitoring stewardship because, our group, the Quintalian Husseinich Marine Guardians, we are just one group and we are out on the water and we are ready to be here to have the localized knowledge to fill in the gaps for enforcement, to show what's happening out on the water. But it's quite challenging. And these orcas live in a very, very populated area as well, with an abundance of recreational and commercial vessels. And that's where it is really important to bring in Husseinich culture. And so we work with different school groups, we attend different gatherings, we assist in harvesting. Um, that on the right is some sea urchin too. And then also we help support programs such as the ReefNet Revival Program. This right here is actually from in the bottom center is an image from a gray whale necropsy that we were a part of. And unfortunately, our team has been part of 2, and it is increasing just due to the struggles that gray whales are having at the moment due to climate change. Um, and so we're trying to integrate WSÁNEĆ knowledge into everything that we do to bring in that localized knowledge into the conversation when we are talking about marine mammals, SRKW, and we've created a cartoon. So the first image is from a little snippet from our cartoon, which should be posted shortly. And we also create educational materials to teach anybody, folks of all ages, about the marine mammals in these waters, but also about Sinchothan and a little bit about WSÁNEĆ culture as well. We are also working on spreading the word. So we were part of a documentary, Shared Water, Shared Crisis. And we also speak out and have been part of several different articles just to share the word of what we're seeing out on the water and what we can do better. But the question is, what can you do? I know it can be easy to fall into kind of the challenges of what's working and what's not working in current systems, but there is a lot that each one of us can do. So you can get informed. First and foremost, learn about the territory you live, work, and play in and what's being done. Learn about the species that share the lands and waters with you and the sustainable methods of connecting with them. So in Saanich culture, a lot of it is about how we view marine ecosystems and individuals and species. So we're not separate from nature, but we are a part of nature. And the KELÇOLEMEÇEN are not just a species. They are the relatives of the deep. And so just like you wouldn't want your family to be going out in the water or going out anywhere and being constantly surrounded by people, by paparazzi, essentially, you wouldn't want that for these relatives of the deep either. So land-based whale watching is a really great way to respectfully watch them, and we live in such an area that we are so fortunate to be able to view them from shore. So you can invest in great binoculars. There are great places to go where you can see them from shore and see them in a respectful way that doesn't add to the paparazzi, right? Because especially in certain areas, we'll see, 20 or more boats surrounding them all day long. As one leaves, another one comes in. So land-based whale watching is a really great way that you can support them, you can connect with them without impacting them in a competitive way. You can understand what species are at risk and the unique challenges they face, and stay informed on management measures for species protection and know the rules for safe boating around whales. You can get involved, especially if you're going out in the water, practice safe boating, know the rules, know what you can do to minimize your impact by following speed limits, restricted zones, and fish enclosures, and maintain legal approach systems around whales and marine mammals. If you're not sure about the rules, you can find out more. You can also support Indigenous stewardship. As I mentioned, the Quintilian with Saanich Marine Guardians are just one group working on the KELÇOLEMEÇEN, but there are many other groups, even just within the WSÁNEĆ territory. There are several other groups doing different work. So know what's happening and find ways that you can actually support the work being done, whether it's making a donation or standing as an ally, but also respecting the traditional areas that you are from, marine laws, and Indigenous protected and conserved areas as well. So just find ways that you can participate in it as well and get inspired too. So it doesn't have to be all doom and gloom, especially when talking about endangered southern resident killer whales, but spread the word and share the conservation stories in a positive way too. Connect with elected officials and local leaders to advocate for more effective conservation measures that consider cumulative impact and the need for Indigenous inclusion, and recognize the meaningful role that you and your community can play in protecting our shared waters. You can also stay connected with us. As I mentioned, we post all of our annual reports on our website for free. You can visit www.quintilian.com for that. You can also follow us on social media as well. Heichka, thank you.
Shelly, that was beautiful and a lot. You guys are doing so much work. It's kind of mind-blowing to see just how many aspects of, or just I guess how holistic the program is that WSÁNEĆ is running. Like from the monitoring, from the streamkeeper monitoring, from Goldstream, and I'm assuming that there's Chinook in that mainstream, and that's a link to because they're the main food source for the southern resident killer whales. I'm just it's amazing. Thank you for all the good work you're doing. We're going to move now into the conversation part of the program. So I'm just going to let folks know that if you've got a question for Shelly, please feel free to raise your hand and queue up, and we'll call on you to ask your question. Or if you're shy and you don't want to ask a question yourself, then you can pop a question in the chat, and Shelly will answer for you. Um, I have so many questions, and this is always where I sort of take a little bit of privilege, and ask. I am blown away that you guys have seen a sea otter. I know that it's been a really long time since there have been sea otters in this region, and so I wondered, I know that's not the main topic, but where did you spot it?
It was just south of Darcy Island, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah,
very
not sure if
cool.
you're familiar where that is. I can go back to the map if you would like. But just south of Darcy Island. They don't often stay here. Sometimes they will, come out into the territory. It's not often, but they don't often stay here because they don't have a mate either. But we do very often see river otters, though.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, and I see Leanne Johnson in the crowd, and we for years. There's a funny story of the SCCA has a sea otter, an image of a sea otter on our booth, and people will often come, and if you know the difference between
Mm.
the two, people will say, we don't have those here. And it starts
Mm.
instead of removing it from the booth, I leave it up there so that we can have that conversation about just that, like the interconnectivity of all of these things. And what, as I mean, endangered species. I mean, this is, our killer whales are they're endangered. There's only 74 left, and
Mhm.
it's quite heartbreaking. And the link back to the Chinook is a really big piece of it. And I don't see any hands up or questions in the chat yet, so I'm gonna start a little bit.
Mm.
One of the things that I think we don't think about in terms of the impacts of the killer whales when we're just if you're not a boater, and if you're not really conscious of it, is the stress from the noise, from the underwater noise, and just how that has changed for these mammals who are, echolocation is how they communicate with each other, and it's how they find their food. So could you talk a little bit more about like that, the increase and the impacts? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's interesting actually being able to have the hydrophone set up in some of these very loud areas too, is because you can actually hear it. It's just so, so loud. And even just seeing on a spectrogram, it's just like it's like a big wave that comes when the vessel comes, and you can't really hear anything else. So imagine living in that all of the time. And especially louder vessels, they operate at a lower frequency, which actually travels a lot further. So they don't actually have to be directly beside a vessel to be impacted by it, but it just spans on for so long. So it's almost like if you're in a room and there's just this constant humming going on as well. And you're just having to spend a lot more energy having to, and also you have to decide, right, if that energy expenditure is worth it, right? So they use echolocation to stay with each other. And so when a loud vessel comes, you have to decide, okay, are you going to just stay close to your family, or are you going to try to find this one fish that's somewhere in the area, right? So you're having to pick and choose. So, let's say you go after the fish, but then you risk getting lost, especially for younger KELŞOLEMEÇEN, right? So it's important that they stay together. But then also you just can't hear anything. So you choose to either, okay, do you have to like yell essentially, for us, right? For humans, again, like I mentioned, it's going to a concert, right? You're talking to your friend. Do you just say what you want to say, or do you just stay quiet because it's not worth the energy, right? So they just having to choose all the time and decide and make these little micro decisions all the time, whether it's worth it to go hungry or whether it's worth it to try to pursue it, knowing that it's going to be a lot more energy that's being spent to try to pursue that hunt or stay together. And it's becoming very challenging. And again, there are more and more vessels on the water too, not just the big ones, but a lot of the recreational vessels as well, right? And so if you get one vessel, one small vessel, okay, maybe it's not so bad. But then if you get 20 together, right? And then maybe there's the ferry approaching in the distance, right? So then all of that all together is just a lot more energy that they're needing to spend when they're already quite vulnerable too.
Yeah, the cumulative effects of all the things. I see Leanne's here with her hand up. Did you want to ask a question, Leanne?
Sure. Um, I have been trying to, well, I've long been wondering with the existence of digital navigation aids that are all GPS linked and easy to follow where you are, how do we get information like on the protection zone, for example? How do we get that embedded in the programs that are widely available to, especially to the recreational boaters who do really stupid, incredibly stupid things on the water. I mean, I think some of them they go on those silly sea-doos, and like they're dumber than, you know, honestly, any species that lives in the ocean. It just, but at the same time, there are lots of recreational boaters who are also very conscious and very careful, and they'll fly their whale flag if they see a whale and that kind of stuff. But it just seemed to me that if there's some way of getting that information, that data embedded, do you have any ideas about that, or possibilities, or even where it needs to go, Shelly?
Mhm. Yeah, thank you for the question. It's a great question as well. So they are already embedded in GPS units that are on vessels. Um, it's, I mean, they've already been out since 2019, so every
Okay.
system should already have it on board their vessels, unless they just need to do an update, in which case
Yeah,
they should be updating their systems.
yeah.
So on our navigation system, for example, it appears as a border, so you can see exactly where it is, and it'll notify you that it's a whale no-go zone
Yeah.
as well. So they are there, but again, it's a lot of onus on the individual.
Mhm.
So those ones will not be on sea for example. And
I
also
know.
it relies on you actually monitoring the screen actively. And so the challenge is if you've been out on the water for a very long time, for example, you are very familiar with these waters, so you're not actively looking at your screen to see what's happening, right? Because you're aware of these waters, right? So, and then if you're looking out, you just see like a vast open road, essentially, right? So people aren't actively viewing, and then especially recreational vessels, they're having a good time chatting with their friends, so they're not actively looking down. And so one of something that we do is we go out and we'll actually educate vessels. So if people are in the no-go zones, then we'll go up to them and then let them know that this area is closed and why. And a lot of times, a lot of people say that they just didn't know, but also it is in quite a small area. So a lot of it is used as a shortcut to enter into different harbors, for example. And so we've been pushing to make them extended, so and also year round, so it's easier for people to know so that they know, okay, this is just always here rather than just, okay, this is a June 1st, so you have to kind of figure out when it's in place or when it's not in place. And then also having them be a corridor rather than just like a little snippet because people are already almost out of it, then it's like, okay, well, I'm already like, it doesn't really matter anymore what I do. So just changing the mindset a little bit too.
Yeah, well, there's always so much educating to do. Yeah, and reminding, I feel like there should just be, yeah, more protected areas would be better. Um, Hannah.
I also have so many questions. I think this was such a fascinating talk. And as we talk about the pressure that vessel traffic and the noise from vessel traffic puts on all of the species, but especially southern resident killer whales, and as we talk about educating, I wanted to ask, I think it's so incredible how your program integrates these different tools like thermal imaging, hydrophones, non-invasive, how there's such a focus on non-invasive monitoring. And I'm wondering, have you been in contact with other groups or, municipalities, government at different levels about how your program can inform better data collection in other regions or in other even parts of the Salish Sea? I think it's just so incredibly important.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your question. So yeah, we're constantly in conversations with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and with Transport Canada, who kind of put in a lot of these measures as well. We've had quite a lot of officials come onto our vessels, and so we can actually take them out to the water, and some of them have never actually seen where the vessel restriction zones are. So it's interesting for them to see the on the water realities and be surprised a little bit of, how many vessels there really are, or oh, okay, how do you determine how far the boat is from the whale? So it's been actually just having that kind of bringing them here has been very nice. But then we've also done some exchanges with other guardian groups too, which has been very, very helpful to be able to see, okay, this is the challenges that we're having in our territory. what about the challenges you're having in your territory? So we've been working with the House It, and then we had a couple of groups come out to us too. And then I'm actually currently in Ottawa at the moment as part of the Whales Are in Our Nature group to bring together different groups and different decision makers and policymakers, MLAs, MPs, to actually talk about, okay, what is actually happening? What can we do differently? What can we do better? And make recommendations and hopefully sway some change that is being happening right now in the Parliament. So yeah, so we're always trying to share the word and actually try to extend our reach to say, okay, we're ready. You know, we have all the tools. We are out on the water, and we are starting to get acknowledged. Like I mentioned, our group was part of a gray whale necropsy, so about a month ago, and we were actually contacted by the Marine Mammal Response to let us know, okay, hey, there was this whale found, and our boat actually went out, and we had actually located the whale and actually helped tow it back. So we are starting to be acknowledged, to know, okay, like we're ready, you know, if they're at capacity, then, you know, let bring us in, you know, we are ready. So we're trying to share it. And again, just really emphasizing that these are Indigenous waters, right? So if you think about it, you know, who are the best people to monitor it, and the people that have been monitoring it sustainably for so long, rather than how it's being done now in a short-term way without results, right? Like the SRKW are still declining, and there are still more projects coming in and still more money being invested for SRKW protection. But unless you change what that money is actually doing and how it's actually being incorporated, then it's not going to change either.
I think that's incredibly well said, and also very heartening to hear about all of the work and connections that you're making and all of the different relationships that you're trying to bring in to help people understand. Thank you.
And I think just everything being connected, right? So, you know, when you look at one individual, like they're not just one species, right? If the well-being of the Salish Sea relies on the well-being of the Chinook, it relies on the well-being of the KELÇOLEMECEN, right? You can't isolate any individual species from it, just like we are part of that system, right? And so trying to include that mindset and perspective, like the WSÁNEĆ peoples have done since time immemorial, right? So just how we look at it, and just like, you know, we are one group, we're just one part of that. We are not the entire part of it, just like the Salish Sea is one part, right? But we are all part of a greater system, you know, whether it's federally, West Coast, the world, right? So especially on World Oceans Day like today, how are we part of that bigger system, and what can we do to move it into a more positive way?
That's beautiful. Absolutely.
And it's a perfect reminder of why we need the global movement. Like the purpose of World Oceans Day is to just remind us of that deeper, far-reaching connection of this one big, one big planet we live on. Um, I see Claire has her hand up. Welcome, Claire.
Okay, yeah. Hi, yeah, Shelly, great presentation. Thank you for sharing all of that. And so well put on your last answer there. I'm thinking about the the response of like monitoring within this framework that the government has sort of set up as like a really great way to answer in terms of cumulative impacts. Like, yes, these distances are what's prescribed, but like actually that is just sort of a tiny like chicken bone. Like that's not making any kind of difference. And monitoring it within these frameworks as as an answer to like, what about all these mega projects that you keep on approving over and over, saying it'll be like the last one, but it never is. And I've been thinking in particular about Metro Vancouver's decision to not have a high quality water treatment upgrade, but instead do the lower quality, and just how we don't really, there's, I mean, possibly a response to that in terms of the Species at Risk Act or whatever, but they're not, these other species who live here with us are not considered citizens by our governments. And just, yeah, the way that you guys are approaching it from not only like heredity and thousands of years of being here, but also like the community now. We are all like they're citizens, we're citizens. Just that sort of agency that we can give them through this monitoring work that you're doing. I really appreciate. Yeah.
Thank you for your comment. And yeah, I definitely agree. It's how we look at it, right? It's not just a commodity, it's not just a species, it's not just anything, right?
Yeah.
It's part of it, right? An integral part of it. And actually, there's really incredible work being done at the WSÁNEĆ Leadership Council at the moment. So you can look into it. And they're actually doing a project, it's a 4-year project looking into rights for all relations. And so
Mhm.
the idea is that they're going to meet with WSÁNEĆ nations and other nations as well and look at, okay, is there anything within the natural world that they would like to give or try to get rights for, like legal rights to? And also looking at what other countries have done to grant legal personhood essentially for natural beings, whether it's a forest, a whale, a river as well
Mhm.
that has been done. So they are in the beginning phases of that, but it is incredible work to look into, and that's also through UBC as well. That work is being done.
Cool. Yeah, I have read that the district or like the city of Port Townsend has said that the Southern residents are legal persons
Mhm.
there. And yeah, I just think that that's such a bottom up way of closing this public interest
Mhm.
loophole that the government sort of has set up for these projects. So yeah, what was the
Absolutely.
name of the group that you mentioned?
It's the WSÁNEĆ Leadership Council, so it's what we're a
Oh, okay,
part of.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Cool. Yeah, thanks.
Hmm. Yeah. And yeah, absolutely. I think there's definitely just been this huge disconnect about where we invest our money, right? So I mean, especially with the potential Canada bill as well, of making changes in the uh, MOU with Alberta as well, that might impact and add another pipeline
Yeah.
to these waters too, you know, without considering any of the local knowledge at all. So those are their own challenges, of course. But there's just a huge disconnect in continuing to invest in these mega projects. But then at the same time, there was just an announcement that there was, millions of dollars being input into SRKW conservation. So they're just very conflicting. So just really needing to have specific priorities, right, within the federal government of the direction that it's going in. And rather than you know, it just seems counterintuitive to invest in one project and then just keep investing money into the protection, whereas the protection isn't doing anything. And then with increasing projects, right, increasing challenges too. And
Yeah,
then,
totally.
yeah, sorry, it's quite challenging as well because I'm not sure if you're aware there was an emergency order that was
Mhm.
proposed for the SRKW. Um,
Mhm.
and the federal government had acknowledged that there was imminent threat to their survival and recovery as well. But there was a decision not to make any changes because of the current measures that were put in place were considered sufficient for their recovery. But it's just challenging when on the water. We're seeing very different things too.
Yeah, and like not only on the water, in the stats, like it's
Hmm.
right there in front of them. And
Hmm.
I was gonna say it's kind of analogous to the way that they've treated the mountain caribou. It's like all this money invested in the wolf cull or whatever, but then also just destroying habitat. And it's definitely a way of working,
Yeah.
say a method. Yeah,
Yeah, a colonial way of working that is
exactly. Yeah.
destroying everything. And so that's, part of the I don't know, I just want to say it again, Shelly, like the gratitude and also just the hopefulness. Like I know there are so many huge challenges for First Nations doing this work and capacity and all the levels, but there's also
Mhm.
this just like, I don't know, a light of hope in hearing you say we are ready. We are ready to get the call to respond to the necropsy and be part of that. We are here. We are collecting the data, and we're collecting the holistic data. Like, this is something that, conservation groups, the Sunshine Coast Conservation Association doesn't do marine science. We do forage fish sampling. We do stream keeping. We totally recognize the connection from, the watershed to the bottom of the sea, and to the sponge reefs at the end, filtering everything. But this program that you're running is cutting edge. And it's like, I think, we need to be able to, as conservation groups, promote and lift up your work and lift up your voice. And so this is a big part of why, it's important that you're here. And then we circle back at this point to say, like, what are the actions? You said you're in Ottawa right now, and I'm very happy that you're in Ottawa right now, because the cognitive dissonance between what the government is pushing right now, whether it's just a political deal to, attract attention on this pipeline or not. We have LNG tankers. Like, we've got, coming into Howe Sound. This is huge, and it's a massive shift, right? And so with every added piece of this economic agenda, it's like just taking us beyond the tipping points faster and faster. So we have to be able to support each other, support you to do your good work. And so I know Hannah's going to list, a bunch of links, and maybe you can too, into the chat, so people can really see and go and take action. I know there's petitions out there. You've probably got a donate here button. You should pop into the chat as well for this. But if there's one thing people can take away from this conversation that is like, you know what, we really, really need support with right now, what would it be?
Well, it's a tough one. Yeah, because it's again, because you talked about all the different systems coming together, right? So, I mean, especially for the pipeline and the Canada bill that's being proposed, there is an open consultation period right now, so you can write a letter and submit it to have your voice heard for the decision-making process, which will be happening in the fall. It was supposed to be happening right now, but it has been pushed back, so you do have a little bit more time. I think that's open up until July. So you can actually actively, use your voice to write that. But then also, yeah, just sharing the word, right? Keeping the conversations going. It's not about just attending this presentation or attending other Nemo talks. It's about, okay, how can you keep the story alive, right? And maybe connecting with what's happening in your local traditional territory as well. So understanding, okay, what nations are there, right? What's the language there? How can you support the work that they're doing? Of course, there is massive underfunding as well. So we're always happy for donations. So if you would like to donate, we would greatly appreciate that to continue the work that we're doing within the territory. But yes, I think just keeping the conversation going, speaking with your friends about it, and seeing how you can take action as well.
That's awesome. We'll make sure, and anything you give us, any resources you've got that we can put up on the Ocean Festival website, we do. It's actually a pretty amazing thing to receive the weekly notifications from the website all year round. People access this space and they use it from all around the world. So yeah, it's a good spot to just give us your resources and your links that people can find things. I had one more question though, and it was about, you talked about land-based whale watching. And immediately I thought, ooh, I want a map so that when I'm in your territory, I can see where can I go and put my feet and grab my binocs and do whale watch. I mean, I look every time I go to the beach. My kid jokes because I'm like, oh, maybe we'll see a whale today. And he mocks me for it, but it's, always hoping and looking out. But there are spots where, you can see them more frequently because they go by. So yeah, like, do you have a map? And can we somehow, or is there a big map somewhere that we can get on?
So there isn't a big map, but there is the whale trail. that you can follow, and there are different sites that are part of the whale trail. So on Saturna Island, at East Point, it's part of the whale trail, and that's actually a really great spot to see any whales passing by. But recently, just even in Victoria, in downtown Victoria, there were some big orcas coming right into the inner harbor and getting so close to Ogden Point and other points just right near downtown. So really anytime that you're out on the water, you can be looking out. And of course, the dream is to see them all the time, but they are starting to come in a little bit more, at least the bigs are. But yes, if you just look up the whale trail, you can find different areas of being able to see them too.
Very cool. Wow. Thank you so much for everything. It's really a remarkable program you've got going and inspiring. So I think that's our time for today. Shelly, I just, huge gratitude to you for coming today and being our first inspiring speaker for the Nemo Talk series. It's such a great way to launch our program. And I know I'm just thrilled that you came and you took the time to be with us. And we're, going to make a point of sharing about your work so that others hopefully will follow along and get involved as well. We've also got a big program this week. Everything's listed up on our Sunshine Coast Ocean Festival website. Hannah's going to pop it in the chat. It's just sunshinecoastoceanfestival.ca. Our Nemo Talk tomorrow is also going to be pretty cool. It's with Dr. Chris Neufeld. He's a coastal biologist, and he's going to dive into the vibrant world of kelp to explore the ecology and conservation of these underwater forests. But tonight, if you're local and you're interested, we've got a beautiful film screening of a film that we showed last year called The Turtle Walker for our Oceans Day event, our in-person event. And this is just such an inspiring film about one man's journey to walk beaches to find turtle nesting sites who changed everything for turtles in Indonesia. So that's happening tonight at Roberts Creek Hall. Doors are open at 6:30 p.m. and the film program will start at 7 p.m. We've got a guest speaker who is a local author who, when she saw the film last year, she got so inspired that she went to Indonesia to the conservation program and participate in it. And so she's going to talk to us a little bit about that. And then, of course, there's, Nemo Talks every day and a couple more films this week. And our festival finale on June 14th, which is a celebration day where we bring everybody together to share and create and celebrate our oceans. So I hope to see you. It would be so great, Shelly, if you were on the coast and you could come to some of these other things. I hope maybe you'll pop in for an emo talk, some of the others, and we'll see the locals in the coming days. Thanks everybody for coming. Happy World Oceans Day.
Thank you so much for having me, and I hope you all have a wonderful World Oceans Day and keep the conversations going.
Thank you, Shelly.